Hello, everybody. Old Buck Dave back again, episode 163 of the Two Old Bucks. And with me, I have Mr.
Well,
Who.
Buck Dell.
And
That's how we make two.
That's how we make two. But we got a special. I won't call her a guest today. She's actually carrying some of the load here.
I'm turning into a regular, I think.
That's kind of scary. That's Judith, Vintage Vixen 1. She's we've twisted her arm into coming and hanging out with us a little bit today, talking about some things. So welcome again, Judith.
Thank you.
We're always happy to have Judith. She gives a little perspective to the old Bucks, and long time friend. So that's what's about, friendship.
There we go.
Yep.
Absolutely. Speaking of friendship, Dale, you sent me something this morning about Hogs Gone Wild, and I didn't get a chance to read it or anything. So what can you tell us about Hogs Gone Wild?
Well, let me set that up a little bit for you. We talk about creatures. We mentioned bugs. We like bugs, and we talk about different things that are interesting.
Well, you're Mr. Lanternfly in the United States. I know that.
Well, I was ahead of the curve.
You were way ahead of the curve.
Things sometimes just come up and you think, I never thought about it like that. I never realized that would be a case. And I read an article the other day that titled "Super Pigs in Canada Threaten Northern U.S."
Another Canadian invasion. Oh my God.
Didn't that sound a little strange?
That does sound strange. Tell us more.
Well, apparently the feral pigs that survived up there adapted to the weather and all the climate, and they're starting to move across the border. And the article goes on to say that they are one of the most invasive of animals.
So where are they crossing the border, first of all?
Well,
in the east, west, or where?
I'm thinking that they're coming down from probably on the, like New York side, that part.
That's okay.
Algonquin National Park, somewhere where there's a lot of forest above them, and they would just come across the border, even in the Dakotas.
And they don't have passports.
They don't. And
okay, all right, I'm with you.
So yours truly is fascinated by the article, and it goes on to say really how invasive they are. And truly, if you want to be an invasive species, what do you think would be the best attribute to have?
Well, they eat almost anything. So, there's lots of food supply, I would think, in the forest.
That's it. Exactly. They have adapted to eat almost everything. In fact, they're omnivores. They'll take small rodents. They'll, even a small deer, a young deer or something like that. But their ability to eat practically anything, and they're so destructive on, planted vegetables, gardens, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Have either of you ever seen the after effects of feral pigs? Have you ever been in the woods or somewhere where they say, "Look at all this"?
Well, I've seen down here. We have wild pigs down here. We have wild boars,
Mm-hmm.
and I've spotted them a couple times in a state park here, but I can't say that I ever got up close and personal with them.
I never actually met one face to face. And just as a side note, when I Googled this, there was a bunch of questions. It says, can you outrun a pig? It says, no, you can't. So I thought that was funny.
Oh.
So I started to Google the questions about this, and the animal, if it gets into a garden, I'm saying a fair-sized garden, a couple 100 feet this way and that way, they just tear everything to bits like a small bulldozer. I mean, they are just so destructive that they can wreck a whole garden in one night. So if you Google these things, and I said, I wonder if they get hit by cars, and they said all the time.
Oh.
Because there's so many of them. Yeah, all the time. It's like it's a road hazard in some places where there's just so many of them crossing, especially at night. But we mentioned different things that fascinate us about animals, and I know we have feral pigs in Florida, and I know that there are people who make money giving you a chance to shoot them, and there are people that hunt them all the time.
Yeah,
and the plethora, actually, the number of questions and the number of bits of information about feral pigs and how they are used and how to clean them and how to eat them and do this and that with them. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. I said to myself, no, this is a crowd that really knows how to be invasive. You got to be propagate quickly, eat everything under the sun, and there you go. You can be ranked number one if you're able to do that.
Free Canadian bacon, love it.
So, but
how do we keep them in? How do we keep them in Canada? I mean, there are Canadians that we like that we'd love to have here, but definitely not the Boers, huh?
Well, they're mobile.
They're mobile.
They're mobile. That's another big advantage.
They don't respect the borders. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of invasive species can't tolerate certain weather, and that sort of keeps them somewhat in check. But if these guys are adapted to northern cold weather and can come down, and I'm sure they can adapt to the warm weather. We know that.
So they're like snow pigs.
We will be.
I don't know. I'm just trying. They're a little smarter than we thought, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking if they get across the border, they're going to like it here better because we do have better weather. So we'll never get rid of them.
Never get rid of them.
Well, we'll have to be careful how we describe them that
Those
way.
Canadians.
We'll just call them an invasive species. So we don't want to offend all our listeners up on the north there. So anyhow, I thought that was interesting. But life to me is like that. Sometimes I think it's such a common occurrence. Something is so ubiquitous, I believe that's the right word, that you wonder how everybody copes with it, and then you Google it. You Google it, something you do every day. You Google it. How do you do that? What is the right way to do that? And then you go on and on and on, and you find out there's experts in the field, and all kind of people are talking about it or talked about it. So I'm always, even my old days now, I'm still fascinated by things I thought I knew all about. And
there's always a new trick for an old buck to learn, I guess, something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of animals and wild animals, and we just finished up with Thanksgiving here. We talked a little bit about it last episode. So I'm curious, how did everybody's Thanksgiving go? Judith, you want to tell us what happened to you on Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving. I took the train to New York City, which is like about an 8-hour train ride, but very, very pleasant. Spent it with family. Went to a turkey bowl game on Thanksgiving morning.
All right.
Yeah, there are 2 Jesuit high schools in New York, and my grandson goes to one of them. And for 100 years, they've been playing this turkey bowl football game on Thanksgiving morning. So that's where I spent Thanksgiving morning, and toured the city and just spent time with family. It was great.
Nice.
Hey, Judith, I have a question. Where did you pick that train up?
Greensburg. 10-minute ride to the station. It's perfect. I'd never go any other way living here. My next door neighbor gave me a ride to the station, picked me up, coming back. It was great.
You're a commuter to New York City. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 hours. Yeah, but I mean, was it a straight? I mean, trains. I travel by trains myself. I mean, I enjoy the ride. Was it a straight shot, or did they have to go?
Yeah, it starts in Pittsburgh and goes to New York. There's a layover in Philadelphia because they have to change engines. They go diesel to Philadelphia, and then the tracks are electric, so they have to change engines. So there's a bit of a pause in Philadelphia, but it's the same train.
Well, there's a trip you could make if you were going to New York City and had a friend to pick you up there, or you had a tour guide. That's a great way to do it. So, well. Yeah. So you had fun. That's good.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
What about you, Mr. D?
I spent Thanksgiving Day with an adopted family. They have a large family with lots of grandchildren, and that's always fun to watch. At a certain age, you're able to just sit down. The food is the younger siblings, several which are girls. They put it all out there, and I just grabbed me a plate and sat there and enjoyed it, nice and easy. It was kind of nice, You reach a certain level of you don't have to do too much anymore.
Yeah.
I find that too. I'm at an age where people are offering me seats and holding my hand when I'm getting up. And
age hath its privilege. Sometimes it's good to be old. Once in a while.
Yeah.
Once in a while. Yeah.
Or at least this stage of oldness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're still vertical. Yeah.
And what about
Well,
you? You're the
well,
one
as
that did
as
all the travel
as I
around.
reported last week, we were going to have two Thanksgivings. So for the early meal, we did go to St. Pete, and we had Thanksgiving with the Ukrainian refugee family and their relatives and friends. So we had a lot of people crammed into a house there. It was nice. It was really good. As far as the family that came over, they're doing quite well now. The father and the mother both have jobs, both working, so they got work permits. Now they're low end jobs because their language skills are effectively zero at this point, but it's a start. So they're both working. Both girls are enjoying school. They are in 6th and 8th grade now. The 8th grader in particular, her language skills are spectacular. She can speak English and with slang, nuance. I mean, it's just incredible. And I said, how did you learn so fast? She said, well, I was studying English before I came over here, and then it just, she's young, okay, and being immersed in it, she was her. There's almost no accent. She has less accent than her aunt, who has been here, for I don't know, 10, 15 years now.
Dave, did they have any, in addition to maybe turkey, something American tradition, they have any ethnic dishes that they added to the meal?
Oh, did we ever? Yeah. There were lots of pierogies, which I could not
Really?
eat, but they were everybody that ate them said they were just spectacular. The woman who just came from Ukraine. She was in charge of making those, and they were the dough was very thin. There was like translucent. You could see what was inside the pierogies. Everybody really wolfed those down. They had some beet dishes and some oh gosh, just a bunch of different stuff and some different cold cuts, the kind of stuff that they would have over there. So we're doing this for like an hour or so, and then the turkey comes out. Jeez, it was it was just incredible. It was a feast and a half. And then we had the very non-traditional tequila toasts. So we did it. We did a couple tequila toasts. I toasted Ukraine in one of the toasts. So that's not a Ukrainian tradition. That was a tradition of one of the. Oh, it was Eric, who we interviewed some time ago. He was the fellow who was instrumental in getting the mother and the two daughters over here. If you remember.
So that's a toast. That's an alcoholic drink.
Tequila. Last time I checked.
Oh,
yeah.
you said tequila. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
the earphones I'm wearing must be bad on my
It was
left
very
ear.
good tequila. It was very good tequila. But yeah, so yeah, we had a nice time, and then we came back and went out to dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, at a restaurant here with the British couple that I mentioned. I think they're both 87, or she might be 85, and he's they're real short. He's like a fire plug. I mean, not heavy or anything, but he's just solid looking. Okay, and he is just a character. He told us a crazy story, a thing that happened to him this summer. He's bald, okay, and he had some skin cancer or precancer, whatever, on the top of his head. Had an operation to cut it out. Had 2 or 3 stitches. They put a big old bandage over the top of it, and they said, okay, after 5 days, soak this bandage and peel it off, and you'll be good to go. So he says, okay. 5 days later, I'm in the shower. I'm peeling this bandage off slowly. It kind of snags a little bit. I give it a good tug, and blood shoots out the top of my head 3 feet into the air. I'm not making this up.
I'm trying to picture that.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? He tore an artery in his head. And he said the blood was just pulsing up into the air, 3 feet, really. He said, I'm like staggering around the bathroom, and it's just covering everything. And he's, we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail here, but he showed us some pictures of him in the bathroom, and wow. But they didn't call an ambulance. They came over. They were there in less than 10 minutes, took care of him. Everything's fine. But it was quite an experience.
I wouldn't think that on the top of your head, as thin as that is between, the scalp and skull, I suppose. I never think of it
Mhm.
having much, but that's interesting to know that there's a vein up there that can cause that kind of problem. I have to be careful when I'm shaving.
It was an artery. I mean, it was not a vein. It was an artery because
One artery,
it
yeah.
was just shooting straight up into the sky. Just
Like
bizarre.
take the old safety razor to, cut down the stubble in my head.
So yeah, be careful taking those bandages off, folks.
Ah,
Oh yeah, but
yeah,
that was our
interesting.
Thanksgiving.
There's three
That was,
examples of holiday
yeah,
activities. So,
fun never ends, man.
but
Fun
but
never ends.
Thanksgiving, I always think Thanksgiving has those options. There's such a variety in the Thanksgiving holiday that if we talk to 10 people, I think that all have a different twist on that day. So I'm glad everybody made it through okay.
Hey, listen, why don't we do have a couple letters from afar. Why don't we talk about those next? First of all, one of our loyal listeners commenting on the Carters, you and the Carters, he said,
Me?
you
Oh yeah, okay.
didn't you met them once? We
did.
talked about that last week. I don't know if don't you know.
No, I'll admit to that. I was with
You
him for
admit to that.
several hours that day.
Several, yeah. Okay. So he said, hey, when he was a kid, I guess living in the DC area, there was going to be a parade led by the car. They were going to be in the parade. And so he rode his bike to the parade grounds, got a good seat, and, saw the Carters. They waved to him. So I've never met a president. I've never seen a live president. Have either of you?
When Kennedy was president, he came to McKeesport in '62 for the midterm elections and was campaigning for somebody who was running. And I got to see him, and I almost shook his hand. He was coming down this line of people, and just as he got to the person before me, the Secret Service or somebody whisked him away, or would have been the next person to shake his hand. So that's as close as I ever got.
Okay.
Generally, those guys are pretty protected.
Pretty protected, yeah. I'll tell you who I did see. I saw Pierre Trudeau. Remember Trudeau?
Mm-hmm.
That's Trudeau the elder, not the one who's there now. His dad. I happened to be in a hotel in Montreal, and it was a big fuss in the area there. We were checking in, like, what are all those people over there? Oh, that's the prime minister. That's Pierre Trudeau. All right. So I didn't get to shake his hand or anything. And also, I was in a bar in Spain, and the King of Spain was in there. So I didn't get to talk to him either, but we were like 3 feet apart from each other. So that's all the best I can do. That's the best I can do.
I was in a bar in Spain when it came.
Well, it was it was like a private room off of the bar. The group that I was with thought we had reserved the room for the evening. Apparently, when the King of Spain shows up, if he wants to be in that same room, he can be in that same room. So he was there with us. So, so that's all I know. That was Juan Carlos.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. So that's pretty much the extent of the VIPs that we've run across.
That's
collectively.
That's just,
there you go. Yeah, we're only 3. So
I've met
a few others, but it's probably in the interest of time, I won't name them all.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, I met some reps and some senators when I was doing some quasi lobbying, I guess. Judith, I think you had a comment also on Dale's discussion on his eyes.
Oh, yeah. When I went to an optometrist when I was younger, and he had this poster on his wall, which I've never forgotten. And it's just had a picture of 2 eyes and said, remember, these are the only pair of eyes you'll ever have. And that just made such an impression on me, that, you can break an arm and it can be put in a cast and repaired and many other things. But if you lose an eye, that's it,
That's
so.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the point is that I could have resolved my issue 2 weeks earlier if there was even someone around that could see me. You know what I mean? That's what I was complaining about. I had to wait 2 weeks to make an appointment. And I did come to a conclusion. I got to see somebody, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's a very common issue. You'll have it forever. It's going to be chronic. You got to do this, that, and the other thing." And in 10 minutes, I was done. I could have did that 2 weeks ago. I'd have felt a lot better. I didn't, I had no idea uh, what was causing my irritation and everything. So, but Judith and I think we have certain empathy for anybody with eye issues.
Well, the other thing is that I often think about is we have emergency rooms everywhere for everything else that could go wrong with your body. Why don't they have at least one in every city, an eye emergency place where you can go and be seen immediately? Because there's some things you wait a day or two and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be fixed. And it just amazes me that was as important as eyes are, at least in major cities, you'd think there'd be, okay, here's where you go if you have a sudden urgent eye problem.
Here-
You don't wait 2 weeks. So
There's the IER.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, and somebody may pick up on that. Some entrepreneur might say, "Listen, I'll open a shop that does that." You never know. You never know. So, what other message did you get?
Well, let's talk about the Anne Lamott piece that I read. Several listeners said they really liked it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. 3 people said that they read it more than once. They liked it so much. So that was heartening, because I know Dale, you and I talked about the article at some length, and felt it was really a poignant piece. I went to the doctor and I said, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I was never old before. This kind of fits right in with that. So
What'd you take from that, Judith? Did you listen to that?
I'm old. I don't remember what it
okay,
said.
see, well, that fits. That fits.
Well, we'll forgive you for that. But basically, what I took away from that was, it was a question, Judith, that you could ask the doctor, "How am I going to do this?" Or you'd ask somebody. Let's say if I asked you something, and I'd say, "Judith, can you tell me how I must do this, or how am I going to feel about that?" And your answer was, "I don't know." Meaning, as you get older, there's just things we just don't know.
Yeah.
And you just can't tell somebody this is exactly what you do, and you won't have a problem. You say, "I don't know, and that's what I took away from that. As we get older, there's just questions we have to find out when we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought myself a t-shirt for my birthday this year that said, "I don't know how to act my age. I've never been this old before."
That's it.
That's
it.
That's what she was saying.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In keeping with that whole Anne Lamott article, and she had mentioned about being forgetful sometimes. She left her car engine running for 3 hours, and try to cover it up. I've had a couple senior moments lately.
You're going to admit to them?
I'm going to admit to them right now. So after I finished recording the podcast last week, and my wife, she was out for a while. She came back, and I said, "You won't believe it. Dale met the Carters." And she said, "Yeah, he told us that a long time ago." It completely gone. No, it was totally out of my memory register there. Just ridiculous.
Let me throw this out to the both of you. Something I noticed the other day. The nightstand lamp, the lampstand next to the bed, the little 2-drawer thing. You know what yeah, it's just a regular nightstand with the lamp on it next to the bed. For many years, I just had a lamp and a radio on that. And I looked at the other day, it looks like a drugstore. There's vitamins. There's that little box from, it says Monday through Friday, you can take the pills. I said, "Holy smokes, look at that.
What happened?"
Yeah. What happened to me? How did I get to the point? I mean, it just keeps. So now I added a bunch of eye drops and other thing there. So it looks like I said, "Oh boy, that's a clear sign. We've reached a turning point." So
well, I got another senior moment to fess up to also, if you can take it.
We can take it.
Okay. We had dinner with Captain Jim and his wife Tamara the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Jim's he sent me a first draft, a very rough draft of the next piece that he's working on, a treasure hunting. It was a good story, had a really interesting ending. I'm not going to tell you what it was because at some point he'll be on here to tell us the story.
Mm-hmm.
But the conversation turned to car insurance, okay? Because we had just gotten a big increase in our car insurance. And then that started talking about home insurance, okay? And, homeowners insurance is a big deal in Florida here now, as you may know, Dale.
I do know.
People are just not insuring here anymore. Anyway, so Tamara and I started going round and round about who we used as an insurance agent. I said, well, we use that agent the one that you recommended, Alliant. And she said, Alliant? I never recommended. She said, I never recommended insurance to you. And we went round and round. And I said, yeah. I said, you told us, and they gave us two different quotes. And I said, I didn't understand why. She said, well, I don't have my insurance with those people. I said, well, how could you not have your insurance with them and you recommended them to me? She said, I'm sorry. She says, you're just wrong. I couldn't believe I was wrong. And my wife said, our insurance company is Valiant. It's not Alliant. Okay. And the person that recommended them was the guy from the bank. Okay. Another case closed.
See, hey, Judith, I promised Dave that I would be the first one to tell him that he lost his mind.
It's happening.
I think someone else is going to tell him.
The whole world's going to know it. Yeah. Jeez.
Well, we're having this is quite a senior gathering today.
Yeah.
Do
you want to hear my story?
Oh, go ahead, please.
Let's hear
A
it.
few weeks ago, I made a journey to visit my 98-year-old uncle, and I went to mass in the morning, and I had a blue raincoat on. Got up to my uncle's, I was going to spend the night, so I went in, had the visit with him. Came down the next morning to get in my car, and I thought, where's my raincoat? So I said, well, I must have left it in the car. So I get in the car, it's not in the car. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I don't think I took it into my uncle's. Had no memory of taking it in there at all and didn't go back to check.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, I must have left it at church because I had used the ladies' room and I remembered hanging it on a hook in the ladies' room. I thought, oh, I know I left it there. So I go to the church, they don't have my coat. And I look around my house and I search in the trunk of my car, no coat. And I just gave up. And I said, well, maybe some poor person found it who needed it more than I did. So I called about a week ago to schedule another visit. And my uncle said, did you leave a coat here? I had no memory. It was in a closet. They found it in a closet. I had no memory of taking it in the house, no memory of hanging it in a closet. But there it was. So I'm going back up next week and we'll get the coat.
Oh, man. Jeez.
Oh, well, my short-term memory is horrible. Just horrible.
Slip sliding away.
Yep.
Well, there you go, folks. The Toolbucks have had their aging corroborated here. we're all in the same cloud.
Corrugated. I don't know. Yeah. Speaking of memory, let's talk a little bit more about long-term memory. This is another thing we talked about last week was where were you when you heard about JFK? Of course, I told her, well, you were at the principal's office getting beat again. And I was in a class. So we did get some feedback from a couple people. It was funny. One of our classmates replied and said, yeah, I was in that same class with you, Dave. And another listener reported in, and she said she was in 11th grade when they announced the shooting of the president and they let us go home. She said it was so horrifying to hear that announcement. I know we heard from old Buck Fred, who was the fellow who was in the class with me, and he said, well, I'll tell you where a couple of the other classmates were. He said, Eddie and Dwayne were in a bar in Punxsutawney. Now, this is during school hours.
This is during school.
And they were only 17, right?
Yeah. They were 17 and they were in a bar in Punxsutawney. I don't know if they were waiting for Punxsutawney Phil to show up or what, but Our timing was a little bit off.
We could do a whole podcast on them two guys right
Wow.
there. Yeah.
Now, Judith, you had a story also. Tell us where you were when you found out.
I was in rehearsal for Westmoreland County Chorus. Every year the county had a choral festival, and we went to one of the high schools for 2 days and rehearsed. And then that was Thursday and Friday. And on Friday night, we did a concert. So because of the difference in time, we had already had lunch. We were back in the afternoon for rehearsal. And, we were singing. Nobody told us anything. But the accompanist took a break. And when she came back in the auditorium, she was in tears. And everybody's like, my gosh, wonder what's wrong. But nothing was said until about 4 o'clock that afternoon. And the reason they didn't tell us was they were trying to decide whether or not to do the concert that night, because it wasn't something that could be rescheduled. We had been preparing for weeks and weeks and weeks, learning all the music. And so the decision was made to go ahead and do the concert. I'm not sure that was the right decision, but finally around 4 p.m. they told us, and of course everybody was in shock. And I think the only people who came to the concert were the parents who came to pick up their children afterwards. That was where I was that day.
It's a day we'll never forget. We'll never forget.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
forget
And
where we
I have
were.
a picture. They took a picture of us just before the concert. Everybody's on stage in their finery and everybody looks sad. It's just, really, really awful.
Yeah. Dale, you and I, of course, attended a lecture on climate change earlier this week. It was an excellent lecture. And obviously, there was so much there that we really can't do it justice talking about it here. But the guy did make one point, which was reinforced to me this morning when I looked at the newspaper, and it said, tens of thousands of people from around the world will descend on Dubai this week for the annual United Nations Climate Change Conference. Okay, now this, if you remember the speaker, he said, now, why couldn't they just Zoom? He says, can you imagine the amount of carbon that's getting shot into the air here, and because of all the jet planes taking all these people to Dubai.
Yeah, he made that point pretty clear that there's lots of things we could do to cut back, but
hey, I got some news from that I read in Morning Brew. That's kind of a news aggregator, so I get every morning. It's kind of nice because it saves me looking through a bunch of newspapers. And they were talking about artificial intelligence. The point they were making here is, and I'll just read this. After Sports Illustrated reportedly published articles by seemingly non-existent writers, the once admired media darling is struggling to recover what's left of its image. On Monday, a report by Futurism revealed that some SI contributors' profiles used AI-generated headshots, while a number of the articles featured writing that sounded more robot than human. Sports Illustrated issued a statement saying the pieces in question came from a third-party partner that assured that the content was written by humans. But that's kind of up in the air right now, really. One of the articles was quote, written by a, quote, Drew Ortiz. And this article, talking about volleyball, it said, quote, volleyball can be a little tricky to get into, especially without a ball to practice with. Now, how can you argue with that? That's clearly AI.
So the AI thing is starting already.
Oh yeah, it's out there. And here's another one that was found on Twitter, now X. And this was from the Columbus, Ohio Dispatch, talking about AI. This was a high school football game that they wrote up, okay? And they didn't say that AI did it, but they eventually fessed up to it. It said, Westerville North edged Westerville Central 21-12 in a close encounter of the athletic kind at Westerville North High School on August 18th in Ohio football action. Now, it goes on and on. That's just a piece of it, but it's all just like, this is making no sense. So apparently the Columbus, Ohio Dispatch got a lot of blowback on that. It's here, buddy.
It's here, buddy. And
folks.
it's
here.
Well, do you remember a few years ago when the Notre Dame football player had the girlfriend who turned out to be fake?
Fake girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Fake
get
is
crazy.
going to be much more realistic in the future, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And perhaps on that note,
Yeah, it's time for us to go, Dave. This is Old Buckdale saying thank you, folks, for listening. Hope you enjoyed today's program. It's always a blessing to have Judith with us. And this is, I'll talk to you next time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
okay, thanks for coming back again, Judith. And thank you also, Mr. Dale, for always being there for us. Oh, and one other thing before we go. We have a special guest again next week. This will be Stan Gordon. And he is been a UFO and Bigfoot researcher for over 50 years. So he's got a lot of stories to tell. So the question is, could Bigfoot be an alien? So come on back and listen to what Stan has to say next week. And with that, I'm also wishing you a good week ahead. Keep those cards and letters coming in, folks. This is Old Buck Dave saying bye-bye.